With that, I would like to start my presentation. I would be talking on the um I'll be talking on the emerging uh, technologies, disaster resilience through the applications of emerging technologies. I also know that every one of you would be well versed about the emerging technologies, what we are today. Uh, I always like to quote His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. He always says, this is one of his famous quote: "The future, the future belongs to those who can imagine it, design it, and execute it. It is not something you await, but rather you create that future." I think this is very, very important and pertinent to begin with this note when we are talking about technology. Today, each one of you will understand that technology is leading us into the age of imagination. With your imagination, you can do anything today. When we were in the college few years ago, we never knew that we will have a handset on our hand to talk to people around the world, to have a video calling, to text messages. We never knew. But today, that gadget has become the center of communications, the center of transactions. Today, you need not go to the bank. You have a Google Pay, which will just enable you to um, transact anything in few seconds. That is the power of technology, and that is where we are in the age of, I repeat again, in the age of imaginations. So when we talk about the technologies, emerging technologies, I would touch a little bit upon the, how Earth observation has really improved. I will give you a little bit of that because due to paucity of time, I may not be able to dwell everything. I hope we will certainly have a wonderful time again with NIDM to talk really about the Earth observation alone in relate to disaster response. So let me begin that improving disaster response with technology from drone to heartbeat detecting devices. Now, what it means during the uh, Haiti earthquake, drones are used. The heartbeat detecting devices are used in order to identify people trapped in the rubbles of the earthquake. The emerging technologies have also propelled in the Earth Observatory. You also have the, uh, UAV, drone, we call it. We also have a technology for life detections in rubbles, the advanced sensors, the Internet of Things, global high-speed internet connection today. We have AI, we have the augmented reality, AR, and also the interface, the evolving landscape of geo uh, spatial technologies. These are few technologies which has been helping us, driving us in the disaster response. The emerging drivers, transformative purpose. It has a very transformative purpose. Now, technology advancement not only promote innovations and a means to abundance availability of data. Now, when we say a means to abundance availability of data, because of the uh, technology today, the data are available readily with us. Today, the Nagaland State Disaster Management Authority, using the 40 years rainfall data, is able to at least forecast or project weather forecast for the state, like IMD is giving for the entire state, for the regions, for the entire country, for the regions. Nagaland State Disaster Management Authority, using the data available in our platform, we are using weather forecast for Nagaland. And this is enabling us with a transformative purpose uh, through the means of advancements in technologies. Now, there is a huge decrease in the costs and increase in the capability of technology, which is unleashing a plethora of opportunities for disaster risk management and response. From monitoring pollution and agriculture to tracking of commercial shipping and preempting managing disasters. These are some of the uh, uh, opportunities or the advantages that has been given by the emerging technologies. The emerging technologies has also given us the opening and new vistas and new views. Now, I would start with the space. I said with the Earth Observatory. Now, optical imaging has benefited from smaller and cheaper spacecraft for a very long time. But today, there are thousands of small spacecraft, or I would say thousands of satellites, small satellites, which is evolving the Earth. And we are able to map the entire planet in every 5 minutes or few seconds. And that is giving us to help us focus, or maybe in order to bring in early warning systems for any cyclonic disaster, event of disaster, or even for any a landslide or any forest fire. That Earth Observatory has enabled us to give us a very precise early warning, because now a crop of new brave space startup is venturing into the niche market of synthetic apparatus radar. This is a very good image, uh, if some of you will know. And there is a company called Pepela, which they will be using a radio waves to provide early coverage of every point on Earth, rendering in sub-meter resolutions. Now, SAR has the synthetic apparatus radar image has emerged as an all-weather, all-condition imaging technologies for increasing the coverage and frequency with which we could observe change on Earth, on planet Earth. Now, there is another company called Planetic. This is based out of Colorado, headquartered. They are focusing on atmospheric remote sensing, and they are planning to launch a small satellite constellations by this year in sun synchronous orbit to gain a global coverage. So the new technologies, the advancements of small technologies, small satellite has enabled us to observe every happenings on Earth, on planet Earth. Now, a view from above has always been fascinating for humankind. So humanitarian in the sky using UVA for disaster response. The view which you see here is a view from above during tsunami 2004. A satellite image were used to assess the extent of the emergency. Now, with the coming of this new satellite, the new Sat4, I mean the small satellite. Now, when we talk about small satellite, it is the size of the bread loaf or even smaller, and that is being launched to the space orbit in constellations. And the NSDMA, now we are considering of having our own satellite constellations, but I do not know whether ISRO will allow us that, but we are looking at it how we can work together. So even ISRO has launched so many small satellites a few years ago. I think around 100 of them were launched. So these are some of the happenings that we need to know, and we need to take advantage of those. Now, UVA, the unmanned the aerial vehicle, UVA has also been very, very helpful in the disaster management. So, like for rapid assessment and mapping of extent of damage in the higher resolutions, then data collections, imagery captured through using drone is certainly not only the use case for UAV humanitarian extents. The transportation of payloads may play an increasingly important role in the future. Today, there are a lot of UAVs, drones coming up with the ability of carrying or higher payloads. So I'm so certainly in the days to come, in a few years' time, in 1 year time, and 2 years' time, UAV also would be enabling us to respond to any event of disaster much smarter and more timely. At NSDMA, these are we have our drone. I think we have a drone which is very powerful drone, which we can carry a payload up to 25 kilos. That is what we have put in our drone. We have a team there, and we also have a very good camera. We are using thermal camera. Uh, Thermal camera. Most of the drones doesn't come with a thermal camera, but we customize in order to fit our own thermal camera because we want to use them in the search and rescue data collections. Now, uh, multiple efforts are also underway to use new technologies for detecting human traps in rebels. The MIT Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT Media Labs, the camera culture group is working on using microwave camera to look through the rubbles for life signs. And the efforts of MIT uh, camera culture are not alone. There is another company called Intellinet, Intellinet Sensors. They announced the launch of Lens 6A robot mountable in order to detect breeding, breeding detector systems they have brought in, which will be given to first responder. So Lean 6A detects breeding in people trapped under a rubble using ultra-light advanced sensors. So these are some of the emerging technologies which all of us should know. A NASA device finder successfully located man trapped in debris in Nepal during the Nepal earthquake by detecting their habits. So these are some of the things. So advanced sensors. Now there is a company called GeoCosmos is leading the way in earthquake forecasting using advanced sensors and algorithms. Now, GeoCosmos is taking on this challenge by creating a global network of scientists, corporates, and foundations, and partners, and committed volunteers, researchers, who all will share the goal of creating safer world for the nearly 2 billion people who are in highly seismic region. So these fellows, they're using a census in order to predict earthquake. If the earthquake can be predicted by the advancement of technology, how many life and property would be saved? So these are the advantages that we are really looking into the emerging technologies. The Internet of Things. Today, all of us are using the Internet of Things, but disaster management is one of the most ideal case for the IoT applications. Since sensors can sense alert about a number of potentially dangerous situations, because the sensors, the IoTs come together, can enable us to give us much better early warning systems. Yes, we have the three sensors which can detect if forest fire is broken out by testing the temperatures, moistures, and carbon dioxide level in the forest. There are ground sensors which can detect earth movement that might signal earthquake, or river levels can be monitored by sensors for possible flooding. Even in the Sikkim, we also have landslide monitoring systems using sensors. I think that was working with the one of the universities by the Sikkim's Disaster Management Authority. I myself have seen that systems, and those are some things that we need to propagate and bring in to maximum use. Another one is the AI. We always talk about AI, AI. Everyone talk about AI, but we need to really understand the utility of artificial intelligence or machine learning in emergency situations. Uh, some of the use of AI or machine learning in the photos to identify damaged building, flooding, or the impassable roads, etc. Following the Nepal earthquake in 2015, humanitarian and relief groups used pre and post disaster imagery and utilized crowdsourced data analysis and machine learning to identify locations affected by earthquakes that have not yet been assessed or received any aid. So these are some of the usages. I would like to also bring in some challenges when we talk about emerging technologies. These challenges, one is the skills. While some of the technologies require few skills, their use can be learned quickly. A high level of competence is required to successfully deploy some other new technologies or emerging technologies. Drones and robots require skilled human technicians to deploy, operate, and also to maintain. So big data analytics require advanced software, powerful computers, and data science experts, and involves significant testing and modeling and investment in research. Now, when we talk about big data, the Nagaland State Disaster Management, what we are today, we are posturing is we wanted to also come up with the decentralized relief payout systems in 40 blocks. Now, what is this decentralized relief? It will be basically a portal or an apps where transaction of relief payment would be monitored, would be authenticated, and we want to streamline in and make these systems using the emerging technologies more transparent in our execution of business. Many of the skill sets and supporting resources are in short supply in many states or in many countries. So these are few things that an organization like an IDM or the state disaster management authorities across the state or many universities should start building skill sets in order to fine tuning with the emerging technologies and disaster response or disaster management. Another one is the legal ramifications. Disruptive technologies pose a number of regulatory and legal challenges. Say, for example, drones often need to be registered and abide by civil air regulations, particularly in crowded urban areas. The NSDMA drones that we have, we registered uh, our drones are licensed. So there are a lot of legal ramifications when we talk about emerging technologies. Some jurisdictions ban the use of drones due to security concerns, and we also have UAV code of conduct that needs to be adopted. Even in SDMA, we have drafted our the UAV code of conduct, but we are still yet to be getting a formal approval of the concerned legal department. I have also have some few recommendations. Those recommendations are one, systematization and standardizations are needed to improve the applications of technology interventions. Now, in our disaster management or disaster response institutions uh, uh, systems, we need to systematize and standardize to improve uh, for the application of technologies interventions. We also need to create a repository of emerging technologies, featuring information on how emerging technologies are being applied for disaster management, would raise awareness and more understanding. So we need to also have a very good repository, and I believe the NIDM or many other state disaster management authorities across the state can certainly come up a repository of emerging technologies. Another recommendation that I have is training is indispensable for disaster managers to understand how to properly deploy a new and emerging technologies in crisis settings. So adequate capacity remains very fundamental for properly planning and deploying relevant technologies. So with these recommendations, I have a very, very important recommendation for NDMA, for NIDM, and for state disaster management authorities. That is that we need to consider creating a post of chief technologists so that to better understand how to bring in relevant technologies for deployment to improve community disaster resilience or to improve the early warning systems that we have. So, when we talk about technologists, it doesn't mean that someone has to be, very focused in developing software coding. It's not like that. But some person who is able to a basic understanding of technology, little bit of computer science, little bit of the space technologies, little bit of the amazing things. So these are very important. So the post of chief technologist is very, very important, especially in the national and the state institutions. My last bite, my last bite. We are living in a very, very extraordinary time. During an extraordinary rate of exponential growth, which disrupts even governments and industries. Now, today, I am sure uh, Bitcoin, Bitcoin must be, I don't know how many lakhs. One Bitcoin must be how many lakhs of Indian rupee? Maybe some, I think more than 45 lakhs, one Bitcoin. Now, do we have the ability to control that Bitcoins? Therefore, extraordinary rate of exponential growth disrupts governments and industries. And if disaster managers, we are not upkeep with the emerging technologies, we would be disrupted. That we need to reinvent. So reinventing resilience, humanity over the next 30 years is very, very, very important. So the next evolution or the next evolutionary step into what we call it meta intelligence is going to come up. What is that meta intelligence? There would be interface between computers and human brain. And I have done it in the NASA Research Park in the Silicon Valley, where we have our university called Singularity University. So I have experimented the brain to brain connections. It's called meta intelligence. The future in which we are highly connected, brain to brain via the cloud, sharing thoughts, knowledge, and special data. So these are the power of technologies that can bring in, not for the destructive purpose, but for transformative purpose of humanity. So this is very important for the transformative purpose of humanity. Therefore, disaster response, people who are in the disaster response and management should also know about the emerging technologies. What we do over the next 30 years would impact the future of human race for millennia to come. Very, very important. Forget about the 30 years. Today, every 6 months, we have a new iPhone or new devices coming up. So that impact is really going to do a lot of changes in the days to come. Don't get confused. To be sure of hitting the target, you shoot first. And whatever you hit, you call it the target. With that note,